How's it going, everyone? It is I, Anime Outlet, and this is part 3 of What If Deku Was One Punch Man. And now, let's begin. Now that you say the name out loud, I'm not sure if I like the quirkless one anymore. How about this? Izuku would say, writing down a new name on the whiteboard. As he would then show it to the class, Midnight would then say, so you kept the same aesthetic with your name. I see that. But I guess it makes you seem not more like a villain or something. I don't know. Whatever you want, I guess. You may go be seated. Midnight would say towards Izuku, as Izuku would just nod, going back to sit at his desk. Putting the whiteboard down, he would stare down at the name he had written. No Cork Man. It was a drop off from the Corkless one, as it sounded more menacing and cool, but No Cork Man also just sounded funny at the same time. Izuku just he could go with either one, to be honest with you. He just didn't know what to choose. He'd have to decide later. However, for now, his name will be No Cork Man, as it really fits his casual aesthetic with just shorts and a t-shirt. So with that, the rest of the class would end up choosing their names, as the next day would end up following, the day after that, and the day after that one, as a week and then 2 weeks would pass from there on, as we now see the class walk into school the next day. Aizawa would be seated up at the front of his desk, as he would end up standing up once everyone was in and quieted down. Good morning, class. Today we are going to be going on a field trip. We are going to be going to a place known as the USJ. It's quite the place. We'll be learning about rescue missions in all sorts of different environments you're going to have to fight villains in. Right now we are just going to get used to it. As many of you wanting to become heroes, you're going to have to do some other jobs, such as being a firefighter, something like that. Of course, there will be heroes with water quirks, but you're going to be tasked with helping heroes just like that. That is just one small example of what is in the USJ. So now, you all are either going to put on your PE uniforms or your hero costume, and then you are going to head down towards the bus bay, get on a bus, and then we are going to travel to the USJ. You may all do that now, as I would say before standing up and walking out of the room, as the rest of the class would hurry up to go down, get changed, and then hurry off towards the bus bay, as Aizawa would see a bunch of them end up arriving, as would then see the last person get onto the bus, as he would give the go-ahead for the bus driver to start driving. Many people would be sitting on the bus and would be staring at Izuku. Izuku, you said you're corkless, but your power you displayed in defeating All Might and Ida, you can't be quirkless. It just doesn't add up. How can you have such a power stronger than all of us, but yet you're quirkless? Izuku would just nod his head. Yeah, that is quite a tough question. I really can't answer it, to be honest. I'm an anomaly, I guess. Quite the strange one. So, I guess that's pretty much the only explanation to it. Sorry I couldn't give you any further explanation saying, oh, I was just lying about it. But why would I lie about that, since my name is No Cork Man after all? As many of them would just sort of awkwardly laugh. Yeah, why would you lie to us? Really just doesn't make sense, I guess, they would say, as the bus would slowly pull up to a massive dome-shaped building, as Izuku, along with the rest of his class, would step out of the bus. Good morning, Class 1A! 13 would yell from the top of the stairs, as the class would slowly walk up, making their way up the stairs to meet with the hero 13, who was the USJ keeper. They were tasked to keep everything clean, organized, and up and running. So, with that there, all of them would see 13 standing there. Today we are going to be doing a rescue training class. You all are going to be learning how to rescue certain people in just all sorts of environments. So, without any delay, let's head in to the USJ, she would say, smiling on, opening up the doors as all of the classes would marvel at its just amazement. It was huge. Sure, it looked huge on the outside, but it was massive on the inside, too. As they'd all look around, seeing how big this place was, as each section looked like its own world with water section, flood zone, fire zone, earthquake zone. Everything just looked so crazy. As all of them were just looking around in amazement, Izuku's eye would catch on something that just didn't belong. As a purple spiral would slowly start to develop in the middle of the USJ. Izuku would be staring at it intently, just wondering what was going to happen next, as the portal would start to expand and expand and expand, and all of a sudden it was huge, as hundreds of villains would be making their way out of the portal, stepping out, as now every one of his classmates, along with the teachers, had their eyes fixed on the portal. What's happening? Many of them would ask themselves. However, one of them, Kirishima, would yell out, "Whoa, they even have fake villains here too? This place is amazing!" He would yell. However, Aizawa's eyes would dart towards him. "These aren't fake villains. They're real. 13, protect the students," Aizawa would yell, jumping down to fight off the villains. As Izuku would be staring on as Aizawa would begin fighting all of the villains back, just trying to ward them off, protecting his class. However, there was just piles upon piles of villains, and they were now just piling up against Aizawa. Aizawa was going to win a one-on-one with all these villains, but they're not going to wait to one-on-one him. They're going to fight in a group. At least that's what Izuku had thought they'd do, because none of them are just going to go up at him one-on-one. Many of them are just going to try to take him down all at once without any synchrony, so that's going to cause confusion. However, if all of them try to go at him at once, he's not going to be able to do anything. And so Aizawa being pushed back and back and back, Izuku would jump into action. And right as Izuku jumped, a portal would go beneath his class, as all of them would start to fall through the portal. Some of them remaining on the staircase, Izuku would look back right as he jumped to go save Aizawa, as he would see his class slowly fall beneath the portal. He would try to grab at least some of them, trying to turn all of his momentum, but it just didn't work. As Izuku was still going down towards Aizawa, he would fix his attention back on him, reaching down his hands, grabbing Aizawa, yanking him up out of the pile of villains before landing right in front of Shigaraki. Planting his foot, he would jump on back, now dropping the injured Aizawa off with 13 and some of the rest of his classmates. Izuku's eyes would stare on directly at the villains now. Jumping down, he would wind his fist back, punching one of them square in the face, sending them flying backwards. This was nowhere near Izuku's full power. He didn't want to kill any of the villains, at least not while he's in UA. As laws still stated, you're not allowed to kill villains, even if they're most toughest opponents. It's just not right. Taking a life just isn't right. And so Izuku would make sure not to kill them, but to surely injure them enough to where they'd be out for several days at that. So with Izuku just jumping around punching, as he'd punch in one direction and 20 villains would be knocked down, he'd punch in another and 100 would knock down, and sure enough, after a couple minutes, Izuku had taken care of the entire mob, as Izuku would be standing there in the middle of all these bodies of villains, glaring on towards Shigaraki, releasing tons of killer intent. How dare these villains come and attack his class? Why? Why would they do this? They're kids! High schoolers! Why would they attack them of all people? As Shigaraki would stare on towards the glaring Izuku, was releasing tons of killer intent on towards him. Great job, green-haired person. Oh, I wish I could have called you by your name, but I don't have it yet. I'll surely find it eventually. Great job defeating all of those low-life thugs. Just be warned. I have something that's 1,000 times stronger than all of them. No, not 1,000. 100 times. No, 1,000,000 times stronger than all of them. You're not going to be able to defeat this. You'll never be able to even lay a finger on it, Shigaraki would say, claiming, just trying to exaggerate the sheer power to hopefully ward off Izuku, trying to make him scared. However, that didn't work at all. Izuku wasn't scared. As this would be happening, the portal was opened up again as a massive bird creature would stomp out of it, now glaring on towards Izuku, the only thing that was in front of it. Nomu, kill that damn brat, he would say, pointing on towards Izuku. As Izuku would stare on towards the Nomu, as the Nomu would plant its feet down before jumping off with a screech, just signifying that the start of the battle had begun. As Izuku would see the Nomu jumping at him with sheer just amount of speed going on towards him, Izuku would dodge his attack before dodging another, as the Nomu would continue on going for just rapid amounts of punches. However, none of that worked at all. Izuku would continue on dodging every single punch, as the Nomu would screech out in disappointment before going faster and faster, trying to hit Izuku. However, all of this would just be not connecting, as Shigaraki would start to get more and more impatient, before fiddling with his fingers, before yelling, "What the hell are you doing, Nomu? Kill that damn brat!" As he would exclaim this, Nomu would screech out, just signifying that it had disappointed its master, as it was now saddened. However, this wouldn't stop, as the Nomu would now go its full strength and full speed, rushing at Izuku. However, Izuku would continue on dodging all of this. However, the Nomu would end up landing a punch right at Izuku's chest, sending him flying backwards. However, before Izuku was even able to hit anything, he would stop himself before planting his feet once again, just like the Nomu had, jumping off towards him, his fist now in front of him, just spiraling as he would start spinning before hitting the Nomu square in the head, as its beak would start to crumble down, as the shards of the Nomu's beak would fall down to the ground, bouncing as it made contact. As the shattering would continue going all throughout the Nomu, as it would then explode into nothingness. Izuku had made the assumption that the Nomu really wasn't a person at all, and so if it were to die, no one really would care. And so that the Nomu explodes with just everything, parts of the Nomu splattering everywhere. Shigaraki would look on in just pure shock. How? How did you defeat the Nomu? He would yell, racing towards Izuku. However, Kurogiri trying to stop him, reaching out, he couldn't, as Shigaraki would go on, racing towards Izuku with his hand out, moving his fingers, trying to touch Izuku with all 5 of them. However, before he could, Izuku would jump right into action, grabbing Shigaraki's wrist, twisting it. Shigaraki would yell out in pain. "How the hell did you kill the Nomu?" He would yell once again. However, he would get still no response. Izuku, still at Shigaraki, would wind back his fist, punching him square in the head, sending the knocked out Shigaraki flying back towards Kurogiri, who would open up a portal, as Shigaraki would then fall through the portal back into the villain hideout, as All For One would be looking on through one of the cameras in disappointment. "I'm guessing the Nomu failed." "Yes, All For One, the Nomu did fail," Kurogiri would say. "I must have underestimated All Might. He's still got some power left in him, huh?" he would say, questioning on towards the Kurogiri, looking down at the unconscious Shigaraki, as Kurogiri would shake his head. "No, it wasn't All Might at all." "It wasn't All Might? That Nomu was designed to kill All Might. It had enough power to do so. You're telling me one of those UA students had the power to defeat a Nomu?" He would say, questioning on, now yelling at Kurogiri. "Yes. It was crazy. He beat the Nomu with a singular punch. It just doesn't make sense to me in my mind. How can someone have so much power? That Nomu was designed to kill All Might even in his prime. And you're telling me someone was able to kill the Nomu with a single punch?" Kurogiri would slowly nod his head, as All For One would then sigh. I guess I underestimated all the UA brats. Next couple of years and fights are gonna be some of the interesting ones, I guess," All For One would say, as we now cut back to Izuku standing there, just with his fist smoking from how powerful it was when he hit the Nomu. "I could have captured that damn blue-haired menace, but yet I didn't. I elected to punch him instead of capturing him. a move surely on emotions and stupidity, Izuku would say, slamming his fist into the ground as rocks would shatter, sending rocks flying into the air. Damn it! How could I be such an idiot? He would say once more to himself, now sitting flat on the ground thinking. However, he would realize his classmates are still in trouble, so he would jump up before racing off to one of the zones that was quite close to him. I didn't want to have to do this. Kurogiri, send in that Nomu. He would say on towards Kurogiri, who would nod shakily. It was the one Nomu that actually scared him, as Kurogiri would tell the Nomu to kill everyone inside the USJ, as Kurogiri would then drop the Nomu down inside of it, right as Izuku jumped off to go save other people, his friends in the other zones. However, before he could even make it 2 feet, the monstrous black Nomu standing above him with red scars littering all over his body would jump in, punching Izuku square across the face, sending him flying across the USJ, slamming into the fountain. As water would crash on Izuku's body, the Nomu would jump in, grabbing Izuku's head, slamming it down into the ground, dragging it across the floor, as the concrete would come up, smashing against Izuku's head, as the Nomu would pick up Izuku, throwing him into the glass, as Izuku's head would shatter the glass above him, sending small shards of glass flying down, just glistening in the light, as Izuku would land, grabbing on barely to the side of the roof of the USJ. As he would pull himself up, he would dart himself right on towards the Nomu, punching the Nomu square in the face, just destroying half of the Nomu's head, with the other rest of his punch being sent flying the other way, shattering everything and anything in its path. However, the Nomu's hyper-regeneration quirk would instantly regrow its beak, as Izuku would look on in complete shock. I didn't want to have to use that Nomu. It was a last-ditch effort in case All Might somehow got all of his powers back and was able to defeat me. It has one of the best regeneration quirks I've ever seen. It rivals one I found a long time ago. Its hyper-regeneration will regenerate anything within a couple of seconds. Whoever defeated the first Nomu, they're gonna have quite the trouble defeating this one, all for one would say. So we now cut back to Izuku standing there, staring at the just midnight Nomu standing on in front of him. As Izuku would look on towards the Nomu as it would screech once again, and another scar forming over where the beak had started to regenerate. As Izuku would look on, just in sadness towards the Nomu. If this was a real living creature that had thoughts and emotions, how much pain had it been in? Half of its body was just littered with scars and cuts and bruises from all different sorts of things. The amount of pain that this thing could have been going through, it just was insane, Izuku thought. So Izuku made sure he'd end the Nomu's suffering. For when he winded back his fist, punching the Nomu's upper body, completely decimating it, and the upper body just flying everywhere as parts and chunks would land. However, all of them would end up coming back together just like a puzzle, fitting back together perfectly, regrowing the Nomu instantly. As Izuku would look on in shock, the Nomu would screech once again, jumping on towards Izuku, punching Izuku square in the face rapidly, over and over and over again, sending him flying back into the water zone, as his body would fall crashing into the water, sending some of the villains flying the other way, creating huge waves just in the opposite direction from where he had landed. Izuku would get out of the water, propelling himself from the bottom of the pool that had been created. With Izuku now jumping up in the air, he would jump all the way to the ceiling. With his feet now behind him, he would push off the ceiling directly on towards the Nomu. Winding his fist back once again, he would punch the Nomu directly in its chest with so much power that Nomu's body would instantly just explode, with all of the parts and chunks being disintegrated from how powerful Izuku's blast was. As the pressure from the blast would keep on going, shattering a massive hole in the side of the USJ. as this punch would continue on going, just destroying many of the forest and trees behind the punch. As Izuku had done that, his fist now smoking, as Izuku would stare on towards many of the villains that had made their way back, hoping to be rescued after being defeated, barely crawling back by some of the students. For seeing Izuku do that, he would look on back at them, as many of them would just be looking on in just pure shock at how Izuku had done that. As Izuku would look on towards them before pointing towards them. "So I'm guessing you don't want to feel what that thing just felt, do you?" He would say menacingly on towards the people. For many of them standing there would rapidly shake their heads as All Might would jump into the USJ, slamming open the doors, looking on after seeing what had happened with the punch that had destroyed half the forest behind the USJ. He would look on to see Izuku's hands smoking as he would then jump off, rescuing all of the other students around there, as he end up jumping off towards Izuku after capturing many of the other villains. "Izuku, what was that destroyed the forest?" "Oh, it was me, All Might. I had to fight some bird monster thing. It was quite the strange thing. It was also quite powerful. Had lots of regeneration and other things," Izuku would say, as All Might would then nod his head before having tons of police cars arrive at the USJ along with ambulances carrying off some of the injured students, along with armored vehicles carrying off all of the villains. As Izuku would be sitting on one of the stairs of the USJ staring up at the sky, as All Might would thank Izuku for just buying time for All Might to get there, as Izuku would just say, "Oh, it's no problem, All Might." Later that night, when everyone else was gone, All for One would return to the USJ looking on at the destruction. "Who is this kid?" he would mutter to himself, looking around at the destruction before stepping out of the massive hole of the USJ, looking on at the decimated forest. "I can only assume that wasn't All Might. That had to be the kid that defeated both of the Nomus. I can't believe I sent in the other Nomu when he was still able to defeat it." How could I have been so stupid? Now we have to find another hyper-regeneration core just like that one. Those are almost impossible to find. How could I have been so blind? All for One would yell to himself, having his voice echo around the USJ before creating a portal beneath him, falling back through it, going back to his warehouse. We now see Izuku sitting in class a month later. Nezu had given all of them a month off so that he could build dorm rooms and just dormitories so that all of them could be safer inside of the US or inside of the UA campus, along with just making moves to make it overall more secure. He also added a grocery store and other sorts of things so that they wouldn't have to go outside of campus to get just necessities. And so they'd be more safer and not have to be attacked outside of campus. Because in order for a villain to attack campus, they're going to have to deal with a whole lot of security, which is just going to be a nuisance now. So with Nezu upgrading the security 10,000%, now with dormitories, grocery stores, all of that to keep all of the students inside. So Izuku would be bidding his mother farewell, hugging her as she would end up crying. "I'm gonna miss you, Izuku. Better promise to call me at least once a week." Izuku would just sort of laugh. "Mom, calm down. We're allowed to visit our family on weekends. It's not like I'm just not gonna show up for just a year. You're gonna see me every weekend, Mom. You just need to calm down," Zuko would say, patting her back before bidding her farewell, leaving out the door. She would end up just smiling on at what her son had become. She was very proud of him, after all. With Izuku now walking in to the UA campus, Nezu would end up looking on towards all of them as he was in the Class 1A room. You all have been asked to come in a week early because you are the hero course. Well, just because you're the hero course, we're going to give you a tad bit of special treatment and allow you to move into your dorm rooms a week early. So you all may now go grab all of your stuff from your household. You may now just go grab all of your stuff and all of that at the base of the dorm rooms, since we asked you to just collect it all and bring it here, piling on some of the UA trucks, and now you may all go set up your rooms. And as you would say, as all of them would race off, going to just be there so that they can relax the rest of the week. So with all of that done after just a couple of days, many of them would just be hanging out in the dorm rooms. This is quite cool, huh? Now we're going to be seeing a lot more of each other. Did anyone have a sparring match, Izuku would say, stretching, as some of the people that had seen Izuku's punch against the Nomu would instantly just say, nope, I am not fighting you. I have seen what you're capable of. Izuku would just look down, just in a depressed manner. Oh, come on. No one really wants to fight me. It'd be a great training exercise. Izuku would say, just sort of laughing, as no one would end up stepping up. Izuku knew that Bakugo would possibly want to fight him, but Bakugo was out doing other things, most likely training by himself. So with that, the week would end up passing, as Izuku would be sitting in class. Alright, class, as many of you know, today is the start of the sports festival. Aizawa would say, as all of them would look on in shock. Wait, why didn't you warn us? We didn't know this was the sports festival. Many of them would yell on towards Aizawa, who would just merely laugh. Well, all of you that had decided to take a month break of training, you all are probably now even below Class 1B level. So if you wish to keep your spot here on Class 1A, I suggest you better do well in this, as we're going to be moving down anyone who doesn't perform to Class 1A's standard down to Class 1B, Aizawa would say. Oh, and that doesn't bid out the thought that class or the general course kids can also make it in. So I suggest you better be trying your hardest out there, Aizawa would say, just sort of menacingly laughing, knowing that many of the students now were just in a panic. So with that, Aizawa would hand out the special-fitted UA Sports Festival uniforms before telling them all to go down and get onto the bus, as they're going to be getting changed in the locker rooms in the Sports Festival Coliseum itself. He just wanted to hand them all out so that he'd get to see just their shocked faces even more, you could say, still sort of laughing. So with all of them now on the bus, they would all be driving, wishing each other good luck, saying, hopefully none of us get moved down. That'd be quite the shame, many of them would say. However, many of the girls were whispering they could do sure without Mineta. It's hard with such a nuisance like him around all the time. With Mineta overhearing this, he would look at them just in shock. His tears would flow out of his eyes. Oh, come on! You know you can't deal without me, he would say, trying to get them to change their minds. However, they would just say, no, we could deal without you, pushing Mineta back, as he would just stare on, just in shame and misery. How could I have done this? How could I have had all of the girls in this Class 1A despise me? Would say, just in shock, staring at the sky. As the bus would slowly pull up, all of the students would end up just hopping out of the bus, as they would end up seeing many of the other classes heading in to the locker rooms as well. So with them having their own special locker room along with the rest of the class, they would all head inside, with them getting changed in their respective locker rooms before being funneled out into a waiting room specially designed for Class 1A. As they would be staring up at the TV, just looking at all the introductions, finally, over the intercom, they would hear, and now, your favorite class, the top hero class of the first years, Class 1A, Midnight would say, announcing it, yelling on as the crowd would end up cheering in excitement, as the doors would slowly creak open, as all of them would end up stepping out as the crowd would roar in excitement, as all of them would just be staring on. And now, your first-year representative, Izuku Midoriya, Midnight would say as we now cut to Izuku's old house with Inko staring at the TV wishing Izuku luck as Izuku steps up to the podium. Hopefully, this all goes well and there's nothing dirty going on. Hopefully no one gets injured. Good luck, everyone, Izuku would say before stepping down from the podium as the crowd would then cheer once again. And that is where I'm going to leave this What If off, everyone. I hope you all did enjoy part 3 of What If Deku was One Punch Man. I thank you all for watching once again, and goodbye.